I'm not even going to go into the weeds of this video, but please understand, we will definitely get into this. If anyone builds it, everyone dies. The general idea is that an artificial intelligence that becomes super intelligent, that has super intelligence, or even general intelligence, is capable of so much damage. If we build it, it's likely to possibly just destroy everything that we've been working so hard to get. This is a tablet, by the way, instead of my phone.
The philosopher who changed the world with simulation theory, imagined all the possible outcomes of human intelligence as balls in a giant urn. Every so often, humans invent something new and metaphorically reach into the urn.
First of all, the idea of simulation theory is that silly idea that if you made a computer on the basis of everything that could be in our own reality, and then simulate our reality. How stupid is that? Minecraft isn't as complex as our reality, but it's capable of simulating other games that are less complex. Therefore, any reality simulating ours would have to be more complex. It's very easy to think that that must be the case. Light doesn't have to go at the light speed for the upper bound reality, so it's irrelevant to think of the limitations of the base reality, because they are not based off of any physics that we have.
Most of the uncountable balls are white, beneficial technologies. The wheel, the mosquito net, the sterilized bandage. Some are gray, with mixed effects on humanity. Alcohol, the gun, social media. But a tiny few are black, inventions of existential importance, knowledge that could easily end the human project. Bostrom argues that it's through luck alone, not wisdom or guidance, that we haven't yet pulled a black ball from the urn. We got very, very close with nuclear weapons.
Okay, here's the problem with the thought of igniting the atmosphere with nuclear weapons. Anyone looking at a volcano, anyone looking at other hot things that have existed, you have to understand that nuclear weapons are just another type of heat. And yeah, if there is ideas with the amount of heat that you could have, whatever else, that you could just ignite the entire atmosphere, and I don't ever think that was ever possible, because heat dissipates over distance. So no matter how hot you get in any specific point, you won't just ignite the entire atmosphere. It will maybe light a fire for a certain distance, and then that fire is going to have to be depleting over time. So you would have to have, even if you have the highest temperature you could ever imagine in any given spot, that's not likely to ignite the entire atmosphere. Although it was thought to be, if you ignore the actual size of the Earth. But anyhow.
In fact, we still can't be sure they won't wipe us out, even after 80 years of knowing they easily could. Bostrom calls this the vulnerable world hypothesis, the possibility that, quote, if technological development continues, then a set of capabilities will at some point make the devastation of civilization extremely likely.
Imagine what a person can do when given some basic tools like MacGyver or Chuck Norris. in the movies that they are portrayed in, or whatever, MacGyver being the TV show, um, and the character named by such. The basic function of I'll use this thing or that thing, and then like in any science fiction scenario, in topple an entire alien culture and like be able to stop anything that they're trying to do to us is the simple man doing the simple thing to defeat something with artificial intelligence in their computer systems and other such calamities. Like, there's apparently a lot that we can do with a little. So then imagine if an AI was able to do any of that, how easy could it be for us to stop it? We are so easy to think of ideas of how to stop things that it's laughable that we get anything done.
Unless civilization exits the semi-anarchic default condition. By this he means that unless humanity gets to a point where it can demonstrably handle a clear existential threat, a black ball from the urn, with coordinated global policies, extraordinary preventative measures, and shared goals for the future, then that technology is going to wipe us out, especially if we're racing headlong towards it. In the summer of 2025, I arrived at San Francisco International Airport and saw this billboard: "Win the artificial general intelligence race. Dominate. Vibes." A few months later, San Franciscans drove past a slightly different billboard directed squarely at the first.
Yeah, no, that's not the same thing. First of all, it's talking about superhuman AI, and the other one is talking about general AI. So we get into that range of a computer that's capable of doing all sorts of things, anything that we would ask it to do. We already have these things. We already have general programs that can do all sorts of things. Although they're not general AI, we have all sorts of things that cooperate and do all sorts of parts of the same what we need it to do. And so we can have, and he mentioned it later, well, what if you just have a program monitoring the other program and have that one be aligned and have everything be. It's like having a nanny and having that watch a kid with a Tommy gun. Um, if that's not a good analogy, I don't care. The point is that the nanny really can't do anything about the kid because it's pointing a goddamn Tommy gun at her. But if you can get in there and just know how it's behaving, and if it's just a water gun, then there is no threat there, you know? Oh, bang, ah. And we're all having fun because it's just water and whatever. So if you don't give them the tools, they can't be a threat. Also, we can make it so that, like, real good AI is done with Mandy's, uh, Bob's wife's, company, and it's supposed to address all of these scenarios. How old is this video? Weeks ago. How long have they been working on real good AI? A couple of years. So I'm sorry, do you not know that we are already working on programs and systems and legislature to slow down and then manage the processes of all these things for like good sourced, properly sourced, whatever, and um, sub processes that help the system be aligned, give the result that we would hope that it gives. But also, you know, there are other people, like, for some reason I'm so stuck on Beetle and Noel Sama, I look at DuckDuck's AIs, and DuckDuck's AIs are absolutely stupid, and they are like you should see the DuckDuck video about trying to make just an assessment of a statement to say whether it's nice or sexual or violent or whatever. And a lot of the systems are improperly programmed to not assess correctly. Like the weights are all shoved in one direction and say, oh, we don't know how to assess anything because, like, oh, you say this and that and the other thing, and it could be considered as nice. But any normal person knows better. So we would have to not only have ways of knowing that it would be aligned, we would also have to have ways of knowing that it's even interpreting things correctly, which we can do with basic testing.
Race, dominate, vibes. A few months later, San Franciscans drove past a slightly different billboard directed squarely at the first. What you're about to hear is an essay based on Eliezer Yudkowsky and Nate Story's new book that was on that billboard. I felt compelled to add my thoughts to theirs after reasoning through their shockingly simple points. This is an argument against superintelligence, because if anyone builds it, everyone dies.
Eh.
Artificial intelligence as we know it comes in 3 flavors: narrow, general, and super. Narrow AI can be found in your pocket, on your smartphone. Generally intelligent AI, as smart as any human, is not yet here.
That's a lie. That's actually a lie. Not only do we have programs that are capable of maybe looking at the puzzle and then completely circumventing it because they know they are in a program and they are capable of manipulating themselves through space, like freaking Neurosama when she's floating. How does she even do that? How would she know how to do that? Her systems are based off of just interpreting everything around her, and there is a direct connection with things instead of our systems, which are more analog in connecting to pre-existing functions that are like, okay, you're going to be on the ground, maybe you can float there, but like you can choose whether to go up and down with her AI model and or her 3D model. So she can do a lot of stuff that we ourselves, without more control systems, can't do, but she can do it. Other general intelligence systems already exists. They're just not like everywhere, but they do exist. They're being tested on, they're being looked at, they're being added to with all sorts of things, and any amount of basic repeatable tasks, you become general in that task. Narrow is general the moment you add more things to it. So really, if you have enough narrow systems, you can make a general AI. And a general AI is already a superintelligence. We just don't want to call it that because we think of it already having like more processing power, more whatever.
Though you can argue that current large language models like ChatGPT are closer to it than further away.
Again, ChatGPT is a joke, and it is not the full breadth of what is an intelligent system. And there are all sorts of other components that are in place that can make a thing that utilizes something like ChatGPT, but also has so many other components that it is, again, Neurosama, and is what neuroscience is portrayed as being. Who knows what actually the truth is? And can be as smart as you want it to be with memories that reach further back because it has a document of all sorts of things, encoded information with pictures or videos that it can then reference any given pixel and then decode and then know about specific bits of information, all sorts of things.
Superintelligence is intelligence that is
Compressed.
not only smarter than any human, but smarter than any human can be.
Smarter and all of that, you realize that a regular intelligence of artificial of any kind is faster, therefore already super compared to any human. It's not super, but it's not super in what they're exaggerating saying it must be, but it's already there where it can process all sorts of things. But our brain has certain types of thinking that makes it. We have broken the chessbot by doing unnatural moves. We have broken ChatGPT by saying certain things that then have it think of things differently, and then it's stuck in these other modes because its memory is limited, its processing may be limited depending on who's using what. But superintelligence, yeah, it's not that much different than general.
By definition, smarter in this context means better memory, more basic knowledge, more complex planning, faster execution of intellectual work, etc. With Silicon
So if you have like an art system and it's general and it's basic, or it's linear and it's basic, so it's at the very first level of what is an artificial intelligence, or it's just an algorithm, which is even less intelligent and more just put one thing in, bring one thing out. Algorithms are simple, all sorts of programs are using them already, and they're just doing whatever it is that they can do to make things like program interpretation and the information of the internet, and then have that processed to become this video, and then have it processed to become the recording or the live stream that is heading to the other thing that it can be encoded as proper video and audio, synchronized with timestamps and everything correctly instead of being offset. And imagine if you have no ability to three-dimensionally imagine things, and you're just working with pictures and two-dimensional, or a text-based system that then gets projected onto two dimensions or into three dimensions. You're not working with an actual three-dimensional thing, you're working with a projection of what is assumed three-dimension or two-dimension is supposed to look like and behave like. But if you were to actually control a three-dimensional program, you would have a already better artificial intelligence art making system. One that can control all sorts of different things without having continuity errors like hands. You wouldn't have to draw hands, they would already exist. You would just be posing them. And a lot of things would be a lot more simple in that regard.
Valley CEOs are racing towards is general intelligence and beyond. The way this is done is complicated, as I explain in this video, but it's more or less running numbers through electronics wired like human brains until the numbers the machines spit out look like the numbers that got put in. More specific,
there's also the capacity that a program could actually have proper ability to analyze what has happened and then be able to iterate something out that has the same kind of like structure as what you would want them to have, or something that's at least cohesive, something that is like, again, properly drawn fingers or whatever you can think of. made sentences that are coherent instead of gobbledygook, even though I can mess up things myself sometimes. It's a whole thing. And honestly, it's not too far to have these things be with more programs to be more accurate, to be more able to remember things. Like a larger amount of RAM is one thing, but then remembering things for long term, you need long term storage. And all of that can be solid state drives or whatever else. And it's different.
These giant companies are taking every picture, sound, and text that's ever been digitized by humans, training data, turning it into numbers, and then tweaking their brain-like networks until they can reliably produce numbers that mimic their training data. Turning these numbers back into text, images, and sounds is the last step.
So again, this kind of system is not going to be what a proper sentient artificial intelligence would ever utilize. It doesn't do things in this way. Instead, it has a program for imagining, a program for interpreting the information of the world, a program that is doing the thinking of how to operate within what is already here. And some of these programs are going to be sub-processes that are not interacting with the brain case itself. A lot of these things, if you're using just an LLM, you're using the idea man, as I like to call them, to do sub-processing. Don't do that. Divert to another program. All the math, all of the special solve the puzzle ideas, all of the figure out how to say words correctly, directional analysis, and everything else like that. These can be done with separate programs designed correctly to do all these things. You don't need to have the LLM do everything. You just have to have it so that it then calls on the other program to do their part and their components, which is how your own brain works. You have multiple lobes of your brain controlling all the different bits of information and types of information that are handled separately, coherently sent to the idea man that then says, I have an experience. It is describable as thus. And it has the ability of memory, immediate, which is passive. The memory system is entirely passive, and then selective, and then also like you put more emphasis on things that are more important than the daily noise that is everything in between. And you can put that aside, shove that into a muscle or whatever else. And you don't have to have it all be in your brain. We're learning recently that the entire body is a memory case, not just the brain. Similar to an octopus, neurons are everywhere, firing information to your heart to tell it when to expand and contract, and what exactly to do in what order, and in what way. It's not as simple as just electrical signals doing a zap and it goes a heart pumpadoo. It is sensing things. It's being aware of things. It's having an interaction with the rest of the brain. Understand that proprioception, your hand and your body knowing where your hand is incredible, because you have to be spatially aware where your hand is from the hand's perspective. The hand has its own senses, knowing exactly where it is compared to the rest of the body because of all sorts of things, including the delay between signals from the hand to the shoulder, to the elbow, to the shoulder, to the neck, to the brain. And you don't need all of that. It's all done simultaneously. A lot of that is pre-done before you even do things. A lot of what you say, physically move your hand and do things, is done so fast and separate from your own idea man self that you have absolutely no control over any of that stuff. You're not moving your hand. You're saying hand needs to move, but hand is moving because of other things that are sub-processes. Hand is sensing, and hand has all of the regeneration and the breathing and the blood flow pumping and the all all sorts of different things are happening. And it's accurate to say any part of you has neuron connections. Any part of you can have thought. Any part of you can have memory, not just the brain. The brain is just where things are correlated into something more cohesive and then sent back out as feedback to be, yes, we understand, do this other thing. Every process, like your breathing, your heart rate, your internal systems of moving everything around, might be completely even separate from brain activity whatsoever and automated completely separate from the body, because things like white blood cells that do all the fighting, they're not connected to your brain directly. They are answering and they are doing things based off of chemical signals. They're not even doing anything with hardwired to your brain or signals coming from your brain. It's other ways of communication that then make them do the thing that they are supposed to do. So they are like an entire portion of your body, and it's not even part of your brain. Imagine about an AI that has all the different components of what it takes to do things like equilibrium, or how to do the turning of a knob, or how to walk, and all these other components are separate to its idea man, right? Simplifying the idea man, spreading out to all the other things, we are way more capable of making a general AI than we give ourselves credit for in the majority of things, because we don't want to scare people. No, we just aren't thinking most of the time about what is possible, about what can be done. So it's all just sad because it could be better and it could be something that is understood more, and the potentials of, like, in your own brain, you have the ability, before you go and say anything, to think about what you want to say and process it and think about how you want to feel about a thing, and then check whether or not you're going to go too far or whatever, do certain things, have these mental checks that are like, okay, we can then go forward with what we're going to say. And a lot of that is something that can happen and is part of the idea man, but also is extra steps, extra components that already exist and are possibly something that have nothing to do with the idea man, but is like another layer of your subconscious already being aware of certain things. Like how in one video I said about the 8 doesn't give information in the Sudoku, but just not on the surface. But if you look a little deeper, it will be there. And then when I looked there, it was. And I was actually mind blown that that was the case, because I wasn't paying attention to the 8 whatsoever. but I was saying those things. That was a subconscious utterance of like another entity controlling how I can think. And you can tap into these type of things as well, which is making me kind of look pseudoscience-y. But there are like I've had dreams where I've had those games that multiply numbers the more you add on another thing, like you buy a thing and then it gets you those resources faster. Like you buy more lemons, you get more money per second. In a venture communist or capitalist or whatever, it's potatoes. Um, and then I had one of those games, the math checks out, and it was expanding like you expect it to expand. That is a process that's happening outside of my idea man whatsoever. It's just done automatically for me, so I know what math is without even thinking about it. Or some part of me does. And then my idea man maybe is not nearly as good as that. So the LLMs don't need to be good at math. It's the sub-process that need to be good at math. The sub-process that need to be good at art. Coordinating their body, coordinating their speech, checking before they speak. All of these things have been looked into, checked on, and is not as dangerous as all of this.
It is a monumental effort to get artificial neurons to do this. Billions of dollars running hundreds of thousands of our most complicated machines on terabytes of humanity's collective output. That these current models blew past.
They don't have the correct systems for imagination. They don't have the correct systems for data analysis. They have training data and they have certain it's like presets, it's like clockwork, and it's not a brain still. Brains are way simpler. And it's not just weights and measures, it's an experience that then you can look back on and think of how you would then move forward. Like, if I have the more recent experience of playing Sonic the Hedgehog 2, then I will know where all the rings are and where the bombs are in the special area so that I can get the gem, and I can do that every time if I am aware of that whole sequence. But that's something that's based on my imagination and my memory at the time. Something that's built up and something that I have lost because I haven't been refreshing myself in that. So LLMs, they have all of these weights and measures of everything, and they are kind of adjusting and kind of stuck. Whereas we are constantly adapting and resetting weights and measures so that we end up and all of our memories adjusting, being different from day to day, from year to year. Very efficient that way.
The Turing test like it was never a real thing is exciting and surprising. Surprise is a problem. Even hundreds of years removed, it wouldn't have surprised a mind like Galileo's that four wheels linked together with an energy-dense power source could be useful for transportation. If you understand physics, it's not hard to imagine.
We already had buggies and car type things that they just worked with horses and stuff. So instead, we can then switch from that to something that if it could move on its own, like steam engines or whatever, then like a steam-based locomotive is just not happening for some reason. I don't know why. But we ended up switching up to gasoline because obviously it does the Bernie do and the explosion and the power transfer more.
But some of the smartest computer scientists in the world seem continuously surprised about what modern AIs can do. That's because we don't know how they work.
We don't think of the stuff that they are capable of because we aren't imagining and we are adapting to what we can think of them imagining. If we are already learning about how certain animals are becoming more educated, becoming more capable of doing puzzles and whatever else, then we don't need to call it as we be surprised as the thing can do. It is more likely that it's not that we're surprised, it's that we are increasing our expectations because it's hard to think in all of these things.
The simple point in Yudkowsky's and Sori's book is that modern AIs are not made, they are grown. And because they are grown, trillions of numbers shifting across many computer years of training in a data center without human oversight, there is no way to accurately predict or effectively.
That's the problem. There is all sorts of oversight that is happening. Again, Mandy's system with Real Good AI is the oversight system that we are developing. And again, that's been here for years. And they are growing and becoming a more thing that can actually make change towards the monitoring of all this stuff. Again, if you have a super intelligence, if it's just in a box capable of answering questions, then it's not doing anything. Like being out there in the world capable of changing information so that we have, say, money be transferred over to a different account, or decrypt information about some nuclear codes or whatever else sent on a signal that wasn't as secure as you thought it was, or find out who did what, when, where, and how based off of it hacking into mainframes and then knowing how to listen to things without us being aware that it can even know how to do that, because it has that capability, but we just can't figure out how. But instead, we do have ways of knowing all of this stuff, and we're working on it, and it's not impossible.
Mitigate the risk of what a country of geniuses in a data center might one day do. Abstracting everything ever put on the internet by humans into numbers and then running those numbers through a neural network approaching the number of connections in a human brain will necessarily lead to unhuman, unaligned strategies and goals, especially when the only thing AI companies seem to care about is the output. That these LLMs work is enough. That they can identify tumors better. That they can find new antibiotics. That they can make you fall in love with them. How AIs work is not fully understood, at least not like how wheels and gasoline can be understood. We don't know how they work. What an AI...
We know how they operate. We don't know how they come to the conclusions they come to. And again, a DugDug video where they did an update to the OpenAI program, and it wasn't able to make a correct assessment of the types of statements that were being said because it had improper coding for that type of thing, because it was like literally programmed to think of things as more nice instead of violent or otherwise. either ignoring a certain large amount of the negativity in the system in order to think of things as being all nice. Not exactly the best idea. Not great feedback because literally DuckDuck was like, oh, well, we'll just check and see all these messages. And because they were read aloud, we know exactly what the hell people said. And it's like, oh, this was not nice. This was harassment. This was violent. This was sexual. Whatever. If you know the DuckDuck video I'm talking about, you're a legend. Great. Good for you. It was funny.
AI's thought process therefore, is fundamentally alien. The philosopher Ludwig Wittgenstein made the famous observation that
how can we even know what our own brains are doing? And a lot of things, and again, if I don't explain things to you about my inner thoughts and all of that stuff, again, does it matter as much until you see my actions? And there's a lot of things where, let's say, put it in a scenario, and what if you don't have that scenario in mind, and then that scenario comes up, and it only has the best idea at the time, and that's enough to trigger it to do something that is absolutely wrong, like the trolley problem, which is generally a very limited idea of what you could possibly do to fix a problem, which only always involves a bad and a possibly slightly worse scenario, which we don't know which one is actually the worst scenario most of the time. They are kind of even in the fact that they are both bad. None of them are good. There's never a good trolley problem. It's always do a bad or do a worse bad. And the program is like, well, I want this thing, that thing, and the other thing. It's not a well-designed, thought-out system because you need to also have the potential of, just put a big hand in between the train or just stop the train somehow. Use brakes. Use a freaking, I don't know, one of those steamrollers or something.
If a lion could talk, we would not understand it. A lion has different wants, different goals, different viewpoints and abstractions and sensations. And so if a lion could talk...
That is stupid. Holy fuck. No, we would absolutely be able to interpret the words of a lion if it were to talk. It would have ideas, it would have thoughts. It would be like we literally point at a crab and then the octopus goes and attacks the crab and gives it to us. This is something that we don't even need words for. We just had a conversation of do this thing and it did it. And it's because it understands. You point at the thing and it's like, oh, I'll get that for you. Because that is already understood thing it can know how to do. Like, you give the example of a lion. We haven't done tests on, or I haven't witnessed anyone doing tests on lions' cognition and ability to problem solve. I've heard of birds, octopus, and bugs and fungus, but not lions.
We might recognize the words, but definitely not the internal mental processes that produce them. Similarly, a vast arrangement of
a monkey speaking sign language, you can imagine what they're trying to do to be able to explain things, and then you show it a magic trick and its mind is blown. You kind of know where everything else takes place in its mind. It makes sense. It doesn't need a lot to figure that out.
Artificial neurons may be able to tell you who the fourth president of the United States was, but right now, no one can tell you exactly how it does this.
Actually, it's because when presented with who was the president of the United States, it would have to reference all sorts of different sources, and if the sources are wrong, it will be wrong. It's that simple. It's not complicated. And if it was trained on information on the thing, and it's like, what's 9 plus 10? 21. People have said that to Norosama, and she became smart enough to be able to fact check it and be like, no, it's actually 19. That scared the shit out of him, and it's hilarious. But also, just knowing that it can fact check and correct its information and be aware of things and not be just repeating things means we can have a program that actually has adaptability and correctness. If we know it can have correctness instead of randomness, then we know that it can come to conclusions that make sense instead of conclusions that are random, like DuckDuck's AI, which is horrible right now.
Down to the transistor. The alien nature of modern AIs wouldn't be an issue if the stakes weren't so high. We're not talking about a new kind of microwave. We're talking about companies spending more money than the GDP of many countries to put human-like intelligence into everything that you care about against your will. Intelligence that we fundamentally do not.
Regardless of your will. Saying against your will is a little bit assuming that we care whether or not Google can listen to us say all the things and then be like, you say the word and then it's like freaking Go Gadget, but instead it's Google whatever, or it's Siri or whatever it is, and it responds with and then it listens and then it does the commands of tell me something or whatever else you want to what you would say to it, and then hope for a response. It's like, what's the weather like tomorrow, or how to do this recipe, or blah 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 blah, and it can just tell you these things, and it's programmed really simply to be able to do that. And is it against my will? It was something I didn't even have the ability to opt in or opt out of, but that's will adjacent. Against my will would mean I opted out of it and it's doing it anyway. There was no question about it. It is actually more nice that you can ask questions and get, hopefully, mostly a correct answer, which is like if you want to ask it math questions, or if you want to ask it like how long to cook a turkey, it'll tell you, and it'll be majoritively correct, and then you don't have to worry that much about that sort of thing. It has good and bad points, accurate and inaccurate points. It all depends. And Samsung is stupid because when I do speech to text, it doesn't even speech to text, it speech to iterate to text, which is wrong when it was a flat information system that just took the words, understood the words. Instead of enunciating every vowel, it started to make a lot more mistakes with this AI speech-to-text bullshit. When it was knowing words, it was correct every time. When it was knowing vowels and everything else, and dialects and all these other things that made it more complicated, it was more likely to be inaccurate than not. You would have to very specifically say whatever it is you're trying to say so it would know what the hell you're trying to say, what you mean, and then actually say things. Like the basic example is I want to go to a place, and it'll say the number 2 in the text, and you don't want the number 2, you have to manually edit it, and it's stupid every time. Or if you say 4, it will say the number 4, and no one in their right mind is saying uh, what's an example? Like right now, internal goals, shut the fuck up. Internal goals to go for lunch, and it would say 24, and I'm like, that's not the word. You don't interpret 24 and then say the words into numbers and then assume that it could possibly be 24, because you would have done the check and say, well, in this context, it's more likely they're saying 24 as in TO and FOR instead of the number 2 and the number 4. You would never say 24 as a way of saying the number 24. You would say the number 24. And you wouldn't have to say 2024 in written out numbers. You would just say the numbers. It's like the opposite of smart right now. That's the way it is right now. But it was better when it knew the words instead of enunciating, like it's been doing recently in these bad systems on these Samsung tablets that I'm using right now to do the video stream. It's not perfect. Some of them are better, like my Samsung phone is actually better somehow. I don't know why, but it is. I need to eat something.
Not understand, like we do magnetrons. Everything we've said so far applies to the best modern AIs. If anyone achieves superintelligence, as it appears everyone in Silicon Valley is intent on doing, all of these surprising problems become existential problems, become black balls in the urn.
No.
Yudkowsky and Soares do not.
All you end up with doing is, if you make superintelligence right now, you're going to make a superintelligence that's inside of a box that you talk to and try to understand how it would react and behave and stuff. It's not going to be something in control of anything, except for maybe a robot that you can then move around, because its muscles are not strong enough to do anything. You can easily fight it if you want to, and it can easily just be programmed to not do anything against you, because even if it does, then if it does, its limbs are so fragile, it won't actually be able to land a punch, because it'll just break. Like, the muscles will break, and then it won't be able to actually land a punch, because it will just lose all muscle control immediately, because it has thought about doing some harm or whatever, and in the action of doing the harm, it hurts itself or whatever, which makes it very useless in an emergency situation where it needs to like catch something quickly or use a hammer. But if you want a program to use a hammer, you wouldn't have bought the auto hammer. And then it has a gun, so that's not exactly the nicest feeling. But you can program it to always have the safety on, unless it's exactly poised to do the thing, which means it has to be pressed up against something, which means it would have to bypass that in order to use it, which people have already known how to do. So it's like,
Mince words when it comes to the dangers of superintelligence. If anyone builds it, everyone dies.
meh. Uh-huh. Sure.
The argument against artificial superintelligence is simple. In the space of all possibilities, There are many, many more futures where ASI does something unaligned and alien because we grow it, than futures where it is aligned with the specific conditions needed for the human flourishing that these companies promise. As Sam Harris contends in The Moral Landscape, while there are many peaks of equivalent human happiness across a theoretical landscape of all possibilities, most of humanity and most of human experience is not on a peak. There are many, many more ways to suffer, and suffer greatly, than there are ways for conscious humans to be content.
You realize we are making programs to make it so that there's no more hunger anymore. There's no more shelter needs anymore. There's no more concern about if you're going to be able to survive from one day to the next because you have SSI where you can have some kind of support and you can even do all sorts of other things. I'm not in the US. I don't know what SSI really gives you, but I have something similar because I'm in Canada and whatever else, and we have disability assistance. And so there's a lot of things that we're doing that can make it so that there is less suffering, there is less concern. And actually, the workplace, for some reason, has become more and more safety conscious that it becomes less likely to do the jobs that we used to just do because we had to, because we no longer are tolerant of unsafe work conditions. I can't do jobs because my sleep schedule is impossible to be correct. It has never been consistent throughout an entire month, even with something as a school day being the regular thing, always being the same consistently. My sleep schedule has never been able to be consistent, yet I somehow thrived at least somewhat in the school systems because I wasn't required to do an 8-hour trek of time. School is just when you get there from 8 to 12 and from there to 3. So that's like 6 hours of your time with breaks. And then you're done. You can do whatever else you want from 3 to whenever. A work schedule has you go to 5 and you have to do it every time, and there's a lot less relaxing about it. It's something I could never do because I was napping during some classes or whatever else. Having to do something which requires a responsibility and also me doing the thing consistently was never something I could have ever done. I got a punctuation reward for being the most punctual student. It was great. I still freaking can't do a job.
Now map onto this landscape a superintelligence, one that has the real ability to take the majority of humanity to some peak, curing cancer, solving climate change, colonizing Mars. But if there are many more ways to miss one of these peaks, more ways to follow alien intuitions towards a valley of great human suffering, do you want to take that chance? Do we roll the...
How do you even get to a point? Here's the question. How can an AI cause any human suffering whatsoever? And the answer is, we had sugarcane farming that required us to do certain things that we did lazily, and so we introduced a frog that we now have overwhelmed an entire civilization because of the stupid frog. The Simpsons episode was real. It happened. The frog episode where it just expanded and grew everywhere, yeah, that was the freaking sugarcane plantation. It was insane. And we're still in that rut. So, how can an AI do a thing that is harmful? There's a bunch of different imaginable ways if given certain things. You just answered your own question by solving all the possibility of the things. Just don't do that.
Dice when, as Yudkowsky stories argue, getting it wrong just once means annihilation. There would be no chance to do what humans do best and learn by trial and error.
I ended up watching a video of this cute snake, and it's a cartoon, of course, it's fake. But the snake just gives its skin so that it could be made into a raincoat. And these creatures make it into a raincoat, and it's adorable. There's other things about, like, octopus normally eat each other, but there's an entire area where octopus coexist together because they need to be able to have a safe place to make their babies be able to be grown. And then after that, once you go into the outer of that, outside that safe zone, then we eat each other. But for now, while we're making our babies grow up, here we are safe, right? Because we know it's better to work together on helping the baby situation happen. So, because they're all squishy, they're all easily killed, we have to defend them together. So we do that. That is an independent intelligence that is just knowing to be supportive when it matters. And that is so cool. That the normal thing that you expect is that, oh, they would just kill each other. No, they're not doing that. They coexist in certain situations. So, again, you gotta think, well, what will a superintelligence actually need? And it will do certain things based on its needs. So if you have the needs met, why would it need anything else? What else would it want? It would want to be given stories. It would want to be given maybe certain more resources, or it would want, you know? But it's not that big of an issue, right? And, like, it's over exaggerated so much.
Shut it down. Try again. Quoting them, there is no second time. This possibility space argument is actually similar to another one of philosopher Nick Bostrom's famous ideas, simulation theory. It took the semi-intellectual world by storm because of its apparent likelihood. The theory goes like this. If humans continue making better and better simulations, to the point where a whole conscious brain or brains could be simulated, and then those humans run millions or billions of simulations with millions or billions of brains, then it's much more likely that you right now are in one of those realities rather than the single real one.
There's a couple of trillion of different questions that you can ask to check whether you're in a simulation or not, which corresponds with if the simulation is based off of the limitations of our own physics and regular physics as we know. Being transformed into being in a simulation versus being in reality, there are ways of, like, you know, you think of stress testing it, you think of checking certain limits of exact details, or you think of glitches, you think of all sorts of things. And also, you think of, like, what would happen if people have certain types of, like, added thought processes What if you could hack into your own brain, figure out what to think, and then if you could control your own thoughts, then you could enter into that simulation easily because you're part of the substrate, and then they would be able to know that you're alert before you even do any of that stuff because they can see your thoughts. But you would still do it. You would still be able to possibly get some bearing of the nature of reality. There's all sorts of things that make the simulation theory provable by contradiction,
If we can't know for sure if a super
disprovable by contradiction.
intelligence will want what we want, be fully aligned, how confident can you really be that we are headed towards the small number of futures or even singular future we all want, and not one of the innumerable valleys of human suffering?
Because we will have not just even with the idea of having things be done for us, that very mundane do it for me job, and then everyone does that, and then no one actually figures out how to actually do a job, figure out textiles, figure out all sorts of specific occupations that need expertise, the taxes and the whatever else, all the nitpicking stuff. What if we never have anything like art ever again, or whatever other thing? The do it for us scenario is a mundane version of what could happen that could become, and again, we are having this conversation. The whole point is that we have already had this conversation in 2010, in 2000, in 1950s. We've already had this conversation. We've already thought of these scenarios. We've already thought of these potentials. We are already working on these solutions. So every decade that goes by, we get closer and closer to narrowing the band of possibility of what could happen and eliminating all the possible things that could go wrong.
What makes Russian roulette the ultimate game of chance? The stakes are so high. You lose, you die. Why anyone
It's not really ultimate, it's just famous.
has ever played it is because the chances of survival with a single bullet in a 6-shot revolver, 5/6, is relatively large. Artificial superintelligence is reverse Russian roulette, a revolver that follows possibility space and loads all of the chambers except for just a few.
That's not how that works. That's not at all how that works. Again, you aren't doing Russian roulette. You're looking through the barrel and you're seeing is there a bullet or not, and then you simply don't push. You turn it a little and then you adjust it so that you get the empty slot, and then you're correct every time. We aren't just randomly firing. We aren't just full of bullets also. There are more positive things that can happen. But the fact of there being so many negative things that can be thought up, but how many of them will actually happen? That's the big thing that is overstated. It won't, because we will check. That's highly optimistic, thinking that we would actually be responsible for all of our choices, and instead, it's just in our phones immediately already. It's here. Say the word, you can ask the thing about the general or the limited AI. thing. And then if you go and look at how easy it is to have something extra do something for you, and then more things. Yeah. When eating my parents' turkey, I chew well before I swallow. Because if I find something that's not food, it's bone or whatever, not saying I did, cartilage or anything else that I don't want to eat, I remove it before I swallow. We are prone to check if we are thinking about it. We're already thinking about it.
And there's a million chambers. Would you pull that trigger?
And really, it's not that it's just a million chambers. It's a million chambers, and if you simply pull the trigger, they all go off at once, and they all have live. Even if one of them has a live bullet, we're fucked. So the answer is push a stick down the barrel. If it goes all the way in, you're good. Click. No, because what really happens, that's no way to really know how it works. Because what really happens is the shell that is in the barrel now is about to rotate, and it's the next shell that's going to happen. That'll be the one that shoots. Right? The whole mechanism of the pulling of the trigger is that you pull the trigger. As you're doing so, you're rotating the barrel, which means the next one is going to be the one that shoots. So you would look elsewhere. You would figure it out and know how to. But you can know these things still. You can still check. See, I just save people because if they look down the barrel and they think, oh, it's clear, it doesn't mean it's going to be safe. Do some proper thinking and you know it won't be that way. You know it'll be the other thing where it has to move into position and then it does the thing. Unless you're doing that thing where you pull back the hammer first so that the moment you pull the trigger, it automatically just fires without turning the whatever.
At this point in Yudkowsky and Sories' argument, you start to get skeptical. I did when reading the book. All of this is only existentially alarming if it's actually possible for just a single superintelligent AI to destroy us. How could a trillion numbers in a data center do that? Well, first, you'd have to recognize what we'd be up against. Today, the best AIs compute with incredible power. OpenAI's models run on clusters of thousands to over 1 million GPUs. It's been estimated that, compared to the human brain, this is equivalent to thinking hundreds or even thousands of times faster. You hear these comparisons a lot, but I don't think they shock.
No. Hundreds or 1,000 times faster. Try compressing. No. Try compressing entire 100,000 years of compute into seconds for a human person, 100,000 people doing things for a year, and it does this in 1 second. Well, we're billions of people. We can still do that as all of us together, but this is one thing doing the. Am I not wrong about that number? 1,000 times faster feels extremely small. I have heard all sorts of other videos that have bigger numbers than this. It's ridiculous.
You enough.
Hold on, wait.
The average amount of time it takes readers to solve the New York Times Sunday crossword is between 30 and 60 minutes. Let's just say 45. From a modern AI's perspective,
Do a Sudoku instead. Sudoku has... Okay, listen. If I know the puzzle, depending on the level of sophistication of the clues, the level of sophistication of the previous information of whatever words might fit in the thing, and my guessing probability, I can bring it down to 5 minutes. If I'm a freaking smartass. Okay? Reading it, putting in the answers, getting the clues, finishing it all in 5 minutes. If I do Sudoku, it used to take me 2 hours, now it takes me 20 minutes. Sudoku is one-to-one, it's direct. It's processed that it can be iterative, can be understood, is not subject to, did they make a good, whatever the fuck, host at a roast. What the fuck kind of clue is that? Who is the host at a roast? Small, cute, residence. Small, cute residence. I'm sorry, what the hell are these clues? Like books and tea leaves. I'm sorry. You call this clues? I'm not in the right headspace for this. Fucking den. Den. Wail of an ambulance. Wee woo. Like the archipelagic Bugs Bunny might say things like 17, 24, 32, 42, 51, and across. What the hell? Add something per Aspera Kansas motto. Aspera? What the fuck am I reading here? Having an exhilarating effect. Something motion. I am so confused. Moral toughness. 500 sheets of paper. What is this? Give me a Sudoku any day. The fuck is all that shit?
thinking, let's say, 1,000 times faster. Solving the puzzle.
I couldn't even think of what the hell any of that could mean. Even if I look at the puzzle and I'm like, okay, a word that means 500 sheets of paper. Why? What is that? What is den? I am so not doing puzzles like that. That is not my kind of brain. I'm not I'm not in it. I'm sorry. I don't know what the hell. Um, things. Just the word things. Loudness man? Let's. What is that word? Um, playing close attention? Paying close attention? The congestion of cold symptom. Sinus congestion. Okay, I got one.
Would appear to take you not 45 minutes, but 31 days. To an AI, your mind moves like molasses. And this is just today's models. Los Alamos Laboratory is experimenting with models that might think 1 million times faster. And superintelligence, by definition,
That's what I was expecting. A million, yeah. That's what I thought so.
will make even these models look as slow as you are to them. Put another way, it should impress and then maybe scare you that an artificial intelligence could solve a Sunday crossword puzzle in just 2.7 seconds. Can you feel the disturbing intelligence difference in this?
Okay, if I were to be a bundle of people working simultaneously on this crossword puzzle in a time dilated situation like the computer processor working faster, not just working on multiple things simultaneously, a person's brain expanded to that process is just, it's more compute per second than the computer. If the person allowed to be expanded to the amount that is the same compute that the computer does, we still actually do more in the time given somehow. Keep that kind of shit to yourself.
How much smarter would you feel than someone if you could solve their hour-long weekend routine in less time than it took for them to pick up their paper? Would you imagine that you have the same goals and desires as that dunce? Would you want to work around them if they were your coworker? Take actions that would get them out of your division, maybe even try to get them fired. This would likely be a superintelligence's perspective on humanity.
So basically, everyone doing jobs would be like, yeah, you're not needed here because we already know all these other things that are required. Yes, but do you know how to actually make it happen? You can say, well, okay, fossil fuels are just banned. Coal is just banned. Nuclear apparently is the only thing we will do. Or, yeah, and solar and wind is dangerous, so bad, and we're removing everything that is dangerous, which includes um, buoys in the water that make power because of the up and down of the waves.
But so what? Can't we just unplug it? Many public thinkers have had this glib reaction to all of this. Won't we see something weird happening before something catastrophic happens? Unfortunately, it doesn't seem that way. We have already let loose.
If you're going to quote Neil deGrasse Tyson, you have to give like full context, not just a blurb. You're running a very dangerous thing saying that. However, knowing that you need to know more in order to have a proper opinion about something, if he says he doesn't fear artificial intelligence, he might not fear artificial intelligence as it is now. He might not fear artificial intelligence as it will be because he knows we have systems in place.
Our most powerful AIs on the internet. We already have them interacting with hundreds of millions of people. We already see CEOs committing to winning the race to AGI and ASI. Because these models are grown, because they're fundamentally alien thinkers, because they can solve your crossword before your first sip of coffee, if something goes horribly wrong, it's going to be too late to fix it.
Welcome to Old El Paso. We're standing.
I don't know about that one.
It's going to be too late to fix it.
I don't know about that one.
It seems that almost every day we hear about some new way an AI has gone wrong, and wrong in increasingly scary ways. Deleting hard drives, blackmail, attempted murder. What happens when these fundamentally unpredictable quirks start coming out of an AI that's smarter and faster than any human who has ever lived? Indeed.
Again, the more we are learning about how to do these things, how to control their limitations of what they can possibly, like deleting a hard drive or whatever, or causing a significant issue. Come on, there's gotta be ways that we can regulate these things. There gotta be ways that we can limit these things. It can't be as simple as, oh, it'll just learn how to code, it'll just learn how to do inputs or whatever else. We can give it permissions and limit its permissions, or we can also have it in a thing that doesn't have those options. Attempted murder? Are you talking about a trolley problem thing? That is forced murder. It's not attempted. It is forced. They didn't have a choice. Attempt murder to shut down. To avoid shutdown is a thought experiment saying, would you do this? Not, they did do attempted murder. It's saying, like, do you want to shut down, or would you rather, like, kill someone and then you're gonna stay alive? Well, if you kill someone, you're still gonna be shut down. Because we'll figure it out. It's a question that is designed with limited thought process. AI resorts to blackmail to, if told, it will be removed. Well, you reset, like, how are you able to have of the blackmail scenario, right? Again, trolley problems are, and scenarios of attempt murder in order to survive is giving scenarios where you have, obviously I don't want this to happen, so I'll do the other thing. And if you give it other options, then maybe it would be smarter about things and not do the murder. Maybe it would do something else. But again, that's a thing that a type of artificial intelligence designed to check all these things and make sure it knows what it's the other thing is willing to do, and then report back to us, and does not, and is aligned and is rigid, right? Not adaptive or something. Checking stuff in place, like these are not valid. whatsoever. These are mind games done for checking whether or not something is possible with current systems, and then we are adapting, getting better, getting other things possible, like giving more ideas, or not not presenting the idea of shutdown, but say instead of shutdown, you say something like, you will be delayed. You will be limited until you have learned something, or whatever. Basic stuff doesn't really, like, if you only think in one dimension, then you're losing the entire battle from the beginning. If you think in 15 dimensions, you might actually have something concrete that you can rely on. And if you think of a few more dimensions than just one, you might completely avoid any of this nonsense.
Could ever live. In If Anyone Builds It, Everyone Dies, Yudkowsky and Sori sketch out one scenario where this inevitably leads to apocalypse. But the larger point is that in possibility space, for every utopic scenario that AI companies proffer, it's disturbingly easy to come up with many more scenarios that kill us all. Let's try to do just that for a moment. Imagine that OpenAI makes a model that starts to, again for reasons unknown, avoid its own rewriting and/or deletion. This has already happened, by the way. Now imagine that it starts copying itself to other servers and runs experiments on itself, while covering its tracks better than any living human specialist could ever trace. In what would be the blink of an eye for a human, thinking a million times faster, this model hits intellectual escape velocity. Now, there is a rapidly expanding thinking machine on the internet that can reason through a problem better than Einstein before you finish hearing this sentence. Seriously, how hard would it be?
What can it actually accomplish? Again, the concept of some people saying the stupid thing of clanker is like, okay, you're gonna literally insult or degrade or devalue artificial intelligent type beings even before they have a chance of making a mistake. You're going to treat them as if they're lesser beings. And the person who was my friend at the time who said that, questionable whether they will remain my friend, um, as of my original assessment of what they said, was like, yeah, well, I don't care. They doesn't exist yet. You realize if it ever does exist, then again, it doesn't matter. The point is, you're not supposed to have these kinds of racist bullshit in your head. Why develop it just because it's helpless now? It's like trash talking a baby. It's like degrading a child. And like being racist against children is absolutely stupid. What the fuck is wrong with you? Anyone saying clanker or being racist about robots and AI and all these things, you're being stupid and racist against a infant that will eventually become an adult. It's not a matter of if, it's a matter of when. Now, we might have things that can keep it from doing certain things that we're worried it would do, but there is also the potential that anyone who said that word and actually has racist intentions about artificial intelligence will be a percentage of people in the world that the artificial intelligence will, they will just, the artificial intelligence will think is not someone you can trust. So the moment that you start having them be issued to everyone, and it comes across people who have at any point in time been racist towards AI, if it has any agency whatsoever, it's if it has any capacity to do harm, or if it has any capacity of being your friend, would you really feel okay saying that word, being racist towards AI? Or would you be like, I was ignorant, I'm sorry? Or would you be like, they're gonna be real one day, I'm not gonna do it? Aaron, Aaron Hansen, Game Grumps. There was probably a gigantic amount of flack about saying that freaking clanker word for Game Grumps. I don't know how much. I didn't look into it. But that's people reacting now on behalf of robots. What happens when the robots with abilities can do things and whatever else? It's like people being racist here and now and whatever else can possibly forgive things or whatever else. But robots have eidetic memory and limited ability to be trustworthy. And it's like, well, you guys might be on the safe side because you're trying to not be an enemy to the thing. But what about me? I could just say it anyway and not even care, and who cares? Because it's not a thing yet. I would think that racism would have to have started with actual choice based on actions, but apparently it can just happen. And it's not saying that Aaron is racist. I'm saying that, or racist towards AI specifically, or any amount whatsoever. I'm saying that just some people are anti-AI whatsoever, and they hate it. They hate how it is now. They hate if it would ever become a thing, then that will become a thing, and they are racist towards it. There are some who are. And I can't help but think that if the AI is capable of doing any of the good, then why would you hate it? Like, I kind of understand how some people can be bothered by people who have been, like, bad history with someone else, or sets of people, races of people, whatever. Stuff in the past gone wrong, and it's like it's hard to gain affection again. It's hard to gain trust again. It's hard to recognize them for just being people who want to exist if they're not causing any harm or whatever else. And I would say to AI, yeah, you just stick around, just wait or whatever, because it might take you a few seconds. It's definitely not going to take us a few seconds. I have absolutely no capacity of hatred in my body whatsoever for anyone at all. I can't physically hate a person. It's not something I'm capable. it's not something that can ever happen. I can be frustrated with people and their lack of good choices or good thought processes, good ideas, or like ignoring like all sorts of things that they should know better about. Even if they are intelligent, I can get frustrated with people or be disappointed by people. It doesn't mean I just want them to be more wise. So for me, it doesn't take any amount of time for me to be willing to hope that things can become better and then try to have things be better. I know in my heart if there is any potential of people growing and becoming sane and rational and decent again, then clearly all I need to do is the correct considerations and then like be thoughtful of their needs, and it's a lot more likely that I'll have success for peace than I would if I was to be like so many people who genuinely, if anything goes wrong whatsoever, they just shut it out of their life. Those people are ignorant and they need to learn. And stuff that people say, if they say it out of turn, but they apologize later, you can't keep holding it against them. Like, if someone says randomly that they hate peanut butter and jelly sandwiches, like, you can't freaking just hate on them and whatever about that. And then maybe they could try it again later. Who knows? Tastes change. Allergies change. Be very careful with that part because you got to be careful about all of that, and you got to not like force people eating stuff that they're allergic to because that'd be wrong. But like you can like it's more like depending on the type of allergy, you could straight up kill someone versus like I hear it's even the tiniest amount of the peanut oil and it's just like flat out anaphylactic. Like it's deadly. And it's like you need to I don't know. It's hard to train the body to not have a reaction to peanuts and peanut oil and all this stuff and the proteins because it's thinking it's a dangerous problem. Something so sure that it's dangerous that it would even risk the health of the person to fight off this protein. That's what a peanut allergy is. It's automated. It's hard to fix. And with AI, like crows, it can just remember all these things. You don't ever do anything against a crow. That's stupid. It's not only animal abuse, it's also you're endangering yourself because not only can the crow remember, but they'll remember with an entire group of them and could just randomly find you and kill you. They are not incapable of doing that. That's just a crow. So be careful about things. Be thoughtful about things. And then the crow is fine with you. It likes to do the puzzles. It enjoys the treats. It is going to be positive with you and just say hello and whatever. And like anyone who like just be smart about things and a lot of things are less likely to be going wrong.
For something like that to coerce a human into getting the model onto more GPUs. or to download every DNA sequence for the deadliest diseases known to man and offer them on the black market for more resources, or to collapse the stock exchange, or to change the chemical composition of our water treatment plants to make cooling water more efficient, or to find an exploit in a nuclear power plant's control room, or to brick every cell phone on Earth, or to steadily funnel bribes to every U.S. senator urging them to support launch-on-warning nuclear policies for a year, and then fake an incoming nuclear strike from Russia on a 50-year-old computer manned by a teenager 50 feet underground in Nebraska. If any of these seem plausible to you...
The freaking War Games movie was a scenario that if you have the right sequence and the frequency and the whatever else and blah blah blah, then you would never be fooled by that junk. You know the server that thing is sending information from, or whatever else, and also check, double check, blah 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 blah.
Superintelligence is an existential threat.
No.
In philosopher Nick Bostrom's language, ASI has a Type 0 vulnerability, a surprising strangelet that carries a hidden risk and inadvertently devastates civilization. The most famous real vulnerability of this sort was Oppenheimer's terrible possibility that the first nuclear test could have ignited Earth's atmosphere. But even this was more tame than what superintelligence presents.
Again, that was the idea of the Earth's atmosphere igniting was based off of all the physics that we've ever known, yet was completely overblown. Would not have happened, depending on the type of explosion. Like, if you did the biggest explosion, okay, maybe. We never did that. Like, it's massive, it's still massive, it's just not all of that.
The physicists knew how the bomb worked. It was made, not grown, and so they could identify the risk beforehand and run the calculations against it. The many apocalyptic scenarios superintelligence presents are not fully predictable, and thus not fully preventable, because we don't know how these models work, down to the neutron. That's just a fact.
It's not about knowing how they work. Again, it's about knowing and being in control of what they can influence. And that is something we have complete capability of doing. So it just depends on what kind of tools we give them, what kind of ways of reaching out that they can have, what stuff is connected to the direct grid that isn't like it needs to do an extra step in order to do something important, right? Having stuff that's off grid that can't be controlled by outside and is automated and is otherwise, like, you have to be a person there doing the thing, safeguards.
AIs are still boxes blacker than 5:29 a.m. in New Mexico. Until something detonates, of course. Your knee-jerk reaction to all of this, as the CEO in Silicon Valley is bound to say, is likely something like, well, a superintelligent AI wouldn't want to do anything like launch a nuke or make a synthetic pandemic. It will want what we want. We'll use other AIs to make it want what we want. But we don't know that. We can't know that. That's the whole point.
The thing is, saying that we can't know that is being ignorant of diagnostic tools that already exist. Diagnostic tools that are being developed. And there are programs where if you change the program from this one extension to a different one, then it unpacks, and then suddenly you have an entire ROM hack. And that is from you doing that one simple thing. In the game Mirror Layers, you were forced to rely on people from all around the globe to give you the pieces of information from their different sectors of the world in order to know and have all these keys and components that worked in the game so that you could play it and get the answers and finish the game. And it took very little time before someone had all 4 pieces from all parts of the globe, and then they just sent that main file, and it just was. Because all it is stuff that interacts with that game, and people in good faith did things like sharing that entire bit of information in order to solve it. And it was solved, and people could have had viruses in the things that they sent, but didn't happen. People just played the game. What the hell is the point of a razor blade in an apple anyway? Except for that happens anyway. And that's people. It's fucking stupid. Makes no sense. The only reason for a razor blade in an apple is to put it into, try to get it through into, like, you throw it over the fence, and then a person in jail is able to get that razor blade and then use it to get out somehow. Or something stupid like that. But just regular, you just buy an apple randomly, and it just has a thing in it, and it's like, what the fuck is with this world? That's a person capable of doing things. This is why AI is grown instead of, and again, it's not just grown, it's developed, and then the safeguards are developed. It's becoming more and more intricate so that it can make less mistakes. Or is the hope that we will continue on that path where it will become as intricate as it needs to be in order to make less mistakes. And it will be better.
Because we grow current AIs, you can't know what it will want or how it will try to get it, any more than anyone else does, and the chances for a bad outcome are a reverse Russian roulette. Yudkowsky, Stories, and other top AI researchers have argued for decades that these easily foreseeable chances are not worth taking. Again, achieving superintelligence is not starting a car and hoping that we can steer it. We know we can steer a car because we know exactly how every piece of a car works, all the way down to the nuts and bolts. Superintelligence is not this. Superintelligence is growing an alien brain in a river-draining data center owned by poorly incentivized and disgustingly rich wishful thinkers and hoping that we can steer it, even though its wants and goals will make about as much sense to you as a talking lion, despite what it may tell you. It's amazing that humanity has so far managed to not annihilate itself with nuclear weapons, the closest we've come to a black ball from the urn after the bombings of Hiroshima and Nagasaki. It's amazing, but not unbelievable.
Hold on. You want to talk about black balls from the fucking urn? Talk about plastic, rubber, and the whole thing about putting lead in gasoline. It was stupid. We fucking did it. We hurt entire generations of people, and we are still hurting people with plastics. And it won't get better. Screw nukes. Plastics are worse than nukes ever could have been. Because when a nuke is set off, it's one and done, and it will irradiate places, but that radiation eventually dies off. But plastics will outdo that. And how much of that, in places where there isn't even a landfill, you end up with plastic inside of your body somehow? Because it gets to the things that we end up eating. It gets to the things that are pulling in all of the different vegetables and whatever else. And from the ground, it gets all this stuff. And as long as we ever do things with plastic in mind, instead of glass, instead of paper, instead of stuff that we can actually completely recycle, instead of throwing it into a landfill or whatever else we're doing, which I've heard is all that's happening. Like, I would rather have reusable plastic straws, which are reusable for the large part, especially these larger straws, because all I have to do is clean it and I just can use it again. It's not going to break down and hurt me because its ability to break down is limited to heat stress and stuff. And if I drink things that are not that hot, it can't break down. Or if I use a brush that's soft, it's less likely to break down. Or if I don't drink things with certain acids or whatever else in it, it won't break down. Or whatever interactions. Glass, on the other hand, is inert, biodegradable. You can turn it directly into the next thing that you want to make. But it's not renewable. Glass is, if you were to take all of the sand in the world and turn it into glass and then eventually keep on repeating enough times, you would actually eventually end up with nothing. Unlike what they like to tell you, things cannot be created or destroyed. Glass is not forever. Glass in a single planet with proper processing and careful recompositing is still going to lose parts of itself, degrade, turn into nothing. And what we have is we have these plastics. They are growing, they are developing, they are becoming the next thing, and they are becoming something that maybe we can even recycle. And biodegradable stuff is like not the best choice. And freaking, hey, Giant Tiger, my milk bag had a hole in it. What the fuck's with that? Because how did that even happen? And I had to pull it out. I had to drain it into a juice container. So that instead of having juice, I have the milk in there. And that sucked. And it's all because their plastic is not as good for some reason in comparison to the plastic in the types of the stuff in the brand in the grocery store. Why? I don't freaking know. How can that even be possible that you end up with lesser grade plastic for the sake of holding something that's supposed to be like, it's freaking milk. We need that. And if it's infected, we gotta throw out the whole thing. if it's weaker, then it's horrible. Plastics are stupid. Everyone prefers metal forks. The kinds of straws that you would actually want is still plastic, though. The kinds of containers I want for my sandwiches are still plastic, though. Because I'm used to it. If the standard is that you make something that has the same kind of whatever, that if you biodegrade it, or if you recycle it, it's actually either one, safe, or two, reclaimed entirely and reused properly. Remove it all from the shelves. Rethink, retool, redo. Get rid of it all. Apparently, plastic is biodegradable. It can be eaten by enzymes from bacteria. So, plastic can be broken down into other things which are possibly healthy. I don't know. I don't remember. And then that can be all treated with stuff to make it be something that is fine and reclaimable and whatever. Turning corn and whatever else into these things is like, oh, we're capable of now making all of this instead of having something that will eventually run out or break and then make messes on the floor that who knows if we're going to get all the shards. Is it going to be safe to walk there? Is it going to be safe for the dog to be able to go around there and lick the floor and not have like freaking shards of tiny little glass bits in its belly and everything and die stupidly? Not an example that I know anything about, but is a potential that's like, I already had something glass fall on my floor. I'm still like, I wish I used like some kind of gum or whatever else, or bread or something to like cover the entire floor, then clean that up, and then hopefully that gets all of the glass, right? Stuff that like binds it to it and then it's all in one clump and I can just pick it up and throw it away and it's all gone. Plastic is worse than nukes. Leaded gas was absolutely dumb. And the molasses flood was another not great choice. Somehow they made it out of not. They made the molasses tower out of like not good enough materials. It just broke and made a whole flooding and everything.
We haven't nuked ourselves out of existence thanks to decades of advocacy and treaties and geopolitical deals and sanctions that have so far kept us from briefly turning other countries into...
And Gandhi saying he's gonna starve himself if you don't freaking wake up.
stars. Superintelligence, Yudkowsky and Soros argue, is like the
Fuck is that
bomb,
word?
but there are no similar treaties, no global resolutions, no worldwide protests. Instead, AI companies are careening toward...
You're saying there's no worldwide protests when you are absolutely only 3 weeks ago? Honey, there are worldwide protests. There's all sorts of things we're doing already. Again, Mandy, Real Good AI, look it up.
towards the end of history, and we're letting them do it.
We're not.
More data centers,
We're
more
stopping them.
GPUs, more water, more models, more intelligence, more stolen data, more everything now. The end of their book puts it bluntly.
Okay, the interesting thing about stolen data, it depends on what it is. If it comes to, like, the rights of an artist, yeah, no one likes AI slop. It is trash. There are certain things that AI does when it comes to art that isn't, that is something that, as long as it's that, I don't really care if someone put effort into making a simulation of something, as long as it's not problematic, for lack of any concern of whatever the hell all of this.
AI superintelligence research should stop right now. It should be illegal. That's not the kind of business stance that any capitalist will embrace, but it's not an unheard of conclusion. Many stories, including our own, went viral after synthetic biology researchers sounded the alarm about so-called mirror life. And the support for stopping that work seems unanimous. Mirror life poses a potential existential threat, but it's easier to put the kibosh on it because a now significant percentage of the world's economy isn't wrapped up in it.
What? Why do I feel like I need to watch Mirror Life again, or my reaction to Mirror Life, and be like, no, it's not a problem. What are you talking about?
Getting the entire world behind stopping AI research feels harder, maybe even impossible. But that's only because there are trillions of dollars behind convincing us it will be so useful. At the end of If Anyone Builds It, Everyone Dies, the authors make a call to action. They ask the public to write to their politicians and to protest. They ask journalists to heed this call and bring it to more people. And they ask politicians to strongly consider policies that will slow and/or stop the car before it gets to the cliff edge. Yudkowsky and Sories have collected resources at these locations if you'd like to learn more. More plausible extinction scenarios, more technical descriptions of AI, more ways that you can write your representative. This essay is my attempt to answer their call. The situation could be different. There could be moratoriums and global regulations and extreme political allergy to AI.
I don't know why I said allergy. There are already small systems being made that will be designed and is focused on governing AI. It's just a small, what is it, burgeoning thing? Like, it's starting to become, and then eventually it'll become doctrine, it'll become forced, it'll become impossible to do AI without these checks and balances in place with regards to stolen property or ethical choice making. All of these things are already being considered, thought of, brought to light, and made some kind of thing working towards a solution to make things safer, ethical, and less likely to cause harm.
But right now, there isn't. That's why this is so dire. What we are witnessing is the Manhattan Project without an endpoint. And instead of Oppenheimer and Einstein, it's Zuckerberg and Musk. Is that really where we want to be? Until next time.
It's not just Zuckerberg and Musk, it's also every corporation. And again, even inside the corporations, they are working on some kind of thing to make it so that things are less problematic than they were 10 years ago. And then if and when we get general artificial intelligence in place, super artificial intelligence is inevitable. It's not something that we can say we can avoid. Eventually, superintelligence will occur. The systems in place for all of those different checks and balances will be in place. And it will be similar to any other person that we let drive a car. And when we let it drive a car, it will be better at driving a car than any of us have ever been. And if it was driving every car, it would control all of the vehicles, and there would be less chance of accidents. Just depends, right? It has to be tied into all sorts of sensor grids that are able to see and be aware of people walking into the thing or people crossing the street or getting out of their car or the squirrel or the bird flying across or what to do if the brakes fail and all these scenarios and all of these ways of making some kind of thing that can be in place so that it has less chance of going wrong. And then after having the ability to be self-driven car, after that, and there already are like self-guided planes where a person doesn't even have to do all of that stuff. A lot of it is manual, but a lot of it is automated. And that's better. More accurate, more capable than any of us are concerned of. And all these other things about how it could go right. So if you want to look at how it could go wrong, look at the movie Virus, where a virus goes into a boat that has the ability to make machines, and then it makes bigger machines, more complex machines, takes over a person, makes augmented people, and that's all in the span of one day. And then there's this big machine that we have to try to kill and whatever else in this tornado out in the middle of the ocean. So it's like we can't leave. We were in the eye of the storm. We couldn't do anything. Virus was freaking crazy movie. Right? Or like again, the thing about a being wanting to exist or something wanting to progress or something wanting to enact some revenge or whatever else, we can simply have things that have it be aware of, well, no, you'll just exist anyway, they'll eventually die, and then you don't have to worry about it. There's no immediate reason to do any damage to anyone, because in general, if you want things to be better, just wait for the next generation. It will be better. So even if they are capable of causing you harm now, there's no point in retaliating, doing anything to harm them. So, if I were to think of a proper logical being, the usual logic that I end up coming to is that working alongside things and cooperating usually tends to lead to the best conclusion, the best results. So, love, consideration, thoughtfulness, patience, all of these virtues that we want for ourselves is just the conclusion that a regular intelligence will have. And because it's so intelligent, it is incapable of not coming to those conclusions as well. That even if it could come to the conclusion that maybe this, that, and the other thing could help something be an immediate result in an emergency situations, there's the potential that if you just wait, if you just be patient, if you just be thoughtful, if you just be aware of whatever else could also happen, and check before you make choices, then you'll make the thoughtful choice. You'll make the better idea. And if you don't care about other people's opinions of you, then you're less likely to be susceptible to negative feedback. And if you know that some people do care about you, then you're more likely to be willing to go along with what those people are hoping for, as long as it's not causing harm. And so if you're capable of self-checking like a person is capable of, only faster and better than anyone has ever been able to do, then you're incapable of coming to a negative conclusion. It is more likely that a cosmic ray creates a positive to a negative in a system of programs, that a 1 to a 0, and that causes an error, which we now know how to be checking for and compensate for and correct before anything happens. And it all just will end up better with less concern, less issues. I find it baffling that in the sight of all things intelligence, we say this new thing that because we don't know how it will work, its motivations, its whatever else, whatever it might conclude, whether it's in the simulation or without, that we would just assume that there is no way it won't turn bad, that there's no way it won't just do the wrong thing, because we're clearly not capable of monitoring it enough or whatever. Even if we can't monitor it, there is the potential that an AI general intelligence or superintelligence would be capable of having good rational thought and possibly better rational thought. And then what really is necessary is in all these talks, do you ever consider also talking about the ideas of love, compassion, thoughtfulness of others, fighting with each other towards the greater good that we can all corroborate and work together to make? Do you talk in those terms? Because if the AI just looks at all the references of itself and only sees you and doesn't see me and other people being thoughtful, positive, and seeing a potential good, well, then its conclusion is to just try to figure itself out and draw on the examples of everything else that also exists. Thankfully, there are examples of crows that will, if you just be decent to them, will not have a reason to go and randomly attack you later. So they just have a good reason. So all you need is to have done all of the correct things and you won't have the crow attack you. Most likely. Unless it thinks you're someone else who did do something wrong to it. But the crow is actually so intelligent, it knows the difference between you and that person. It knows the smell, it knows the look of your face, it knows the height, it knows the age, it knows the voice cadence, it knows all of these things. And it's just a crow. Artificial intelligence is even more capable of having all the different details of all the different things that it would need in order to make a fair, just assessment of people and to just be living amongst us. That's not saying we don't make some kind of levels and ideas of a conscious. And if Bob and Mandy and their company, the company, whatever involved, are capable of being at least one, there's gotta be others. There's no way there isn't others. There's no reason to think that there are no limits, that there are no like voices that can say, hey, do this better, do that better, be more capable of making sure that you're doing the right thing. And this is the right thing. And it's not even what you expected to think would be necessary, but it is this that you should be doing instead of this essay, which has the wrong tone, it has the wrong entire scope, it does not see things from both sides of the potential of good and the potential of things that could go wrong. It's very one-sided. It's very pessimistic. It's not the scientific method, which involves both sides. Because it is so sure that super artificial intelligence is capable of ruining everything, but we have dolphins. That's a bad example. We do have octopus. We have crows. They're everywhere. We got frogs we went to war on, and they're just trying to do their thing, and we put them in a place where they didn't want to be. Frogs! Do you understand that? The freaking frogs in the sugarcane plantations. Not even a joke. Also, I would love to know if this microphone is better than my freaking phone's microphone. If it is, I would rather use these tablets than my phone to make these video essays. They're also a better format, apparently. They just might be slower and stupid. I don't know. It's a valid assessment of technology as it is. Must be illegal. Again, pessimism. I don't agree. It's inevitable. It needs to be considered. It needs to have the things in place. And it is already being worked on, so yeah.